Theater, the perfect place to buy all the necessities for Thanksgiving dinner. I entered the store with a long list of things I needed to get and commenced the journey. To start off, I decided I'd look around for a bunch of random things and see where they came from. And then I would decide I'd see what problems would come with where they came from. First off, I looked at some Duraflame firewood. Hailing all the way from California, I wondered how expensive it was to ship this all the way here, and how big the profit margin must be in order to compensate for that long ship. I put that in my cart for a fire after the dinner, and then decided to keep looking for random things. Along the aisles, I kept noticing these inexpensive items, things that seemed seemingly useless, yet captured your eye. This pig container, coming from California, seemed like something I really wanted to get, so I bought it. And I figured because of the cheap plastic it was made out of, it would have been easy to have shipped from all that distance. I started noticing a recurring theme. A lot of things seemed to be shipped from very far away, like Annie's olive oil. This also is from California. A conclusion I made was that things that were shipped from far away either were manufactured at a very low cost or have such a high profit margin that it is worth it to ship it all the way across the country. Next up, I passed the cheese aisle looking for some hors d'oeuvres before the dinner I was going to have. I had a tough time choosing which cheese I wanted, but I decided on Sargento. This Sargento cheese came from a farm in Wisconsin. One problem I'm sure many dairy farms face, including the Sargento farms, is keeping their cheese and other dairy products fresh on a long journey to other states. Finally, in my search for random items, I went down the cookie aisle, looking for something for a banging dessert after this awesome dinner. I stumbled across some shortbread cookies. These looked really good. It turns out they come from Connecticut, and again, the problem I think they face is the profit margin they have to create after shipping something so far. The distance companies have to send their products plays a huge role in how expensive they are on the shelf. Next up, I wanted to look at the nutritional value and all the different products I was getting. One thing I specifically noticed was the trans fat in a lot of things. Turns out many products don't have trans fat in them, such as this juice, or these corn checks. I looked at the box for a while to see if I could really take this home with me, but it turns out, nah, don't need this for Thanksgiving. But this did not have any trans fat in it either. I also looked at some protein bars from Nature Valley. We personally get these quite a bit, so I looked at them to see if they had trans fat. But nope, these don't have them either. In my opinion, the reason that a lot of foods nowadays don't have trans fat is because of the negative vibe that goes with them. They are looking for alternatives now that offer a friendly nutrition label for the consumers that are looking. However, a lot of foods still have trans fat. And one of the foods I passed with the largest amount of trans fat was margarine. Several different kinds of margarine had up to 3 grams of trans fat per serving. And considering that serving sizes are rather small, if you eat a lot of margarine, you're consuming a lot of trans fat. Trans fat is bad for you because it's easy to break down and requires less calories to burn it. Along with this, it also gives a silky texture to the food, and it gives it a longer shelf life. This is why several different products have it in. I also noticed that a lot of food for baking had a lot of trans fat in it, such as these reindeer cookies. I considered picking them up, but due to the 2.5 grams of trans fat per serving, I had to put them back on the shelf. Twinkies, which have an abnormally long shelf life, around 25 days, were the next thing that I found. It contains around 37 ingredients, and some of these ingredients are crazy. With several chemicals, and also ingredients that come from mines, which is ridiculous, make up this Twinkie. These non-organic items are what gives it such a long shelf life and make it so tasty. The unhealthy Twinkie can be made for about 5 cents. This is what makes it so appealing to so many companies and consumers. It's so cheap and so tasty, yet unhealthy, but it makes for such a great snack that everyone gets it. This, however, did not fit in my Thanksgiving basket. Also in Harris Theater, I noticed a lot of organic foods. These foods must contain at least 95% organic ingredients, with no synthetic growth hormones or other things such as pesticides or herbicides, in order to gain this label. There are a lot of different things that are organic, such as foods, fruits, vegetables, and also milk. Many people consider organic foods a fad that lots of people buy into. There are many people for organic foods and many people who are for modified foods. There's advantages and disadvantages to both, and it requires further research for people to truly grasp a knowledge of which one is better for them. I needed some juice for dinner, so I checked out a lot of options. I wanted to check the nutrition label again to see which ones had corn syrup. I looked at several different juices, including Florida's Natural orange juice and pomegranate juice, premium orange juice, Simply Made orange juice and lemonade, Minute Maid orange juice and lemonade, Tropicana orange juice, Tropicana pomegranate juice, and also Harris-Teeter brand orange juice and lemonade. I was truly overwhelmed by all the options of juice that were available, and it took quite a while to look at all the ingredients on the back. In the end, I made quite an interesting discovery. The juices that contained corn syrup instead of sugar were the lemonades. All the other ones didn't have them. They contained mainly sugar or 100% fruit juice. I took some orange juice, but did not take any of the lemonade due to there's corn syrup, which is bad for you. I had juice, so I looked into some soda. I picked up a Coca-Cola. Looked at the back. Nope, was not taking this home. Coca-Cola contains carbonated water, high fructose corn syrup, sucrose, caramel color, phosphoric acid, natural flavoring, and caffeine. Coke is a major example for commercial farming. It is sold all around the globe and makes major profit. Next up, I went into the fresh produce section and looked for some genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. I randomly picked up some squash, and it turns out that squash is one of the top 10 genetically modified food products. These squash from Superior Farms certainly did not look right. Also in the produce section, I found some Honeycrisp apples. Honeycrisp apples are one of the most modified organisms ever. They've been engineered to an exact taste and also been engineered to be made huge. I also picked up some potatoes, which are also in the top 10 list for most genetically modified foods. Although they had organic potatoes, you could tell the difference. The genetically modified ones seemed perfect. These GMOs were most likely made on extreme farms and then shipped in mass quantities to these grocery stores. I continued shopping and stumbled into the milk section. I wanted to see the difference between organic and non-organic milk, so I picked two of the same brand, the Harris-Teeter generic brand, and looked to see which one was more expensive and why. The two refrigerated milks had quite a significant difference in price. The non-organic milk was about half the price of the organic milk. The shelf life, however, wasn't that different, and this surprised me. I assumed that the organic milk would have a much longer shelf life than the non-organic milk, but it turned out they're only 1 day apart. Typically, organic milk lasts a lot longer because it's preserved a different way than non-organic milk. I remained in the dairy section and looked at the difference between factory eggs and free-range eggs. The factory farm eggs were significantly cheaper. This is due to the fact that they are produced in extreme quantities with the most cost-effective methods. The free-range eggs cost quite a bit more. This is due to the different and less effective way of farming. Although it's less cost-effective to make free-range eggs, there's still a large market that they appeal to, and this allows for them to raise the price. My next task was to find which foods gave me the largest portion for the lowest price. I decided to look at different categories to make more reasonable comparisons. The first one I looked at was cereals. There was quite a big difference in price between the cereal. I was comparing the price per ounce for all the cereals, and I could tell where the change really was. The difference between the generic and the non-generic cereals was huge. The Fruit O's were a lot cheaper per ounce than the Fruit Loops. Next up, I looked at bread, another common necessity. This was very similar to the cereal section. The biggest difference in between prices per ounce were between the generic and then the non-generic brands. The name brand foods seem to all be a lot more expensive per ounce than the generic foods, which makes sense. Next, I looked at vinegar. The name brand vinegar was $1.69 an ounce, compared to the only 4 cents per ounce for the generic vinegar. This was quite ridiculous. I also noticed that the name brand vinegar was on the top, while the generic vinegar was all the way on the bottom of the shelf. Overall, I discovered that in each individual section, the generic food offered the best price per ounce over the name brand food. I was nearing the end of my journey, and I started looking at products that would disprove von Thünen's theory, because I had an idea that it was still not a valid theory. In order to disprove this theory, I looked at the different distances between the different types of farming and the store itself. Cheese, which is typically in the nearest section to the store, was coming all the way from Vermont. I also passed some fresh greens. These greens were also coming from all across the country. The greens coming from California and the cheese coming from Vermont. I looked at some firewood. The Stir-A-Flame firewood that I had visited before was also coming from California. These three things, the enclosed field, the dairy, and the forestry, are the three closest things to the city typically, if we're going on von Thünen's model. Modern technology in shipping and packaging has made von Thünen's model no longer relevant. Things can be shipped from all over the country and still arrive fresh and preserved. The final thing I needed for my Thanksgiving dinner was a Sierra Mist. I wanted to see what was in the Sierra Mist and tell if it was really natural or not, so I looked at the ingredient. Sierra Mist contains carbonated water, sugar, citric acid, natural flavor, and potassium citrate. After researching the ingredients, I decided that Sierra Mist is not as natural as it claims. With an abnormal amount of sugar, around 29 grams per serving, along with natural flavoring, which includes chemicals that aren't really natural, only simulate a fruit flavor, and potassium nitrate, which is used to reduce the tartness of the drink. These things implemented into Sierra Mist make me believe that it truly is not a natural drink. I'd rather go with one of the juices that I picked up earlier. Well, folks, I successfully completed my scavenger hunt. I checked out and headed home to prepare for Thanksgiving dinner. This was truly an experience, and it will change every time I go to the supermarket.